Thank you, Mr. Gandhi, for being with us today. We really appreciate your time. This is a very exciting opportunity for us. Dubai's exceptional logistics infrastructure has enabled it to maintain almost uninterrupted trade flows during the first half of 2020. Your logistics company, ATS, is one of the largest in the Emirates and active all over the world. Although the pandemic has slowed down your activity, since July, the volumes have picked up. Who are your main global customers, if you could name the central ones? And could you give us your trade forecast for the coming months?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me. It's as exciting for me to be here with you and on this panel. Our major customers are most of the multinationals. We work with Nestle, Unilever, Kraft Heinz, Dabur. So these are the multinational customers we work with. Yes, the pandemic has affected us, or rather had affected us initially, but from July we see the growth movement back in action, especially since the lockdown in the UAE has opened up. We are expecting until December our volumes to grow, and then in 2020 we are very, very bullish about the volumes to come back to what they were pre-pandemic levels.
So are you hoping for a good holiday season? Do you have substantial activity during the holiday season?
For the holiday season, UAE is not that impacted because primarily 90% of the goods are imported in the UAE. But yes, for sure, the consumption has reduced. So we do anticipate there will be a lull holiday season this December for sure. But then we expect at least by Easter next year, the movements and the consumers' demand to increase.
The Emirates import 90% of the food supply, mainly from Europe, the United States, South America, and neighboring countries. Do you see Israeli manufacturers becoming a part of this huge food supply web?
Oh, certainly, I do. In fact, ironically, still we do get Israeli goods into the UAE even before the bilateral trade was started, because most of the perishable goods come into Jordan and then they are transloaded into Jordanian trucks and moved by road transportation into the UAE. So here, with opening up the ports between the UAE and Israel, we believe that there'll be direct imports of perishable goods from Israeli ports into the UAE ports.
Could you mention a few specific ones that you think will be especially successful in the Emirates?
Sure, it'll
For
be
instance,
primarily
olive oil, perhaps, or?
Yes, so all the food and vegetables. Yes, Israel's olive oil is known to be the world's best. So yes, we will definitely see a lot of Israeli olive oil on UAE tables soon. Then a lot of fruits and vegetables as well, which Israel produces and which apparently comes via Jordan so far, which also we believe will come into reefer containers from Israeli ports to the UAE ports.
Now, importing fruit and vegetables from Israel instead of from Jordan, Syria, Egypt, Iraq, will this not create a political tension?
Not really, in my opinion. I believe the pie is big. Everyone has a share of wallet. And if the Israeli goods come directly into the GCC, it will not affect any economy substantially, because people will still continue buying from Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, Syria.
So actually what you're saying is that Israel could be contributing to the Emirates' food security, which is a very central topic for the local government, if I understand correctly.
Absolutely, yes.
This is something you're planning ahead, many years ahead, is the food security topic.
True. In fact, the UAE government it's in one of their key strategies to have food security for the UAE. As I mentioned earlier, 90% is imported. So I believe there'll be a lot of strategic partnerships in terms of the technology know-how, which we expect it to be exported from Israel into the UAE.
Let's discuss building materials. I understand there is huge potential in this field too. For instance, float glass produced in the Emirates has been making its way to the Ashdod port in the last few weeks. How large can this partnership become, and are there any other materials that Israel can import from the Emirates?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. Ironically, there are exports happening into Israel, but they're happening via the South Asian ports, and then they're reshipped back into Israel. So the cost of goods to the Israeli consumers is pretty high.
Yeah,
now with the direct trade, now with the direct trade lane between the UAE and Israel, so we'll see a lot of intermediaries will be filtered out, and there'll be direct exports from UAE into Israel, especially industrial goods, primarily which are manufactured in the UAE. So that's building material, float glass. There is steel. So these are the aluminum. These are the products which we expect direct exports from the UAE to Israel.
If we could continue on this topic of the imported goods, the Emirates actually serves as a huge hub for imported goods from China, which is your biggest trade partner. Do you think that Israeli companies could benefit from buying these products directly from you? I mean, seeing as you import such huge amounts, perhaps it will be cheaper than importing it from China.
Yeah. So as we all know, UAE is one of the world's great commercial and transport hubs. It offers unique opportunities to create an ecosystem for trade between both the countries. So UAE is anyway well suited as a hub for bringing imports from the Far East into Jebel Ali, and then from here we cross-distribute into various GCC and Middle East and the North African region. So I personally believe that Israel also can be can play a pivotal role in such supply chain distribution.
What about e-commerce? You have huge warehouses and huge infrastructure for e-commerce, which is growing at a tremendous rate. I suppose the bilateral relationship can benefit from this as well.
Yes, indeed. In fact, if there are any Israeli manufacturers or entrepreneurs who want to sell their products to the GCC, so we can offer them a platform where we import their goods from Israel into the UAE, store it in our distribution centers, and then e-commerce is growing, and we believe it will continue to grow even if post-pandemic. So I believe that everyone is gearing up to make sure that the last mile delivery, which is the e-commerce section, is absolutely seamless. So here we come in to store the goods in our warehouse and then provide an end-to-end delivery to the final consumers through our e-commerce platform.
So thank you so much for being here with us today, and we hope to meet you soon in Dubai.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure speaking to you, and I look forward to our Israeli friends and welcome them to the UAE. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.